But you know, it's really great though. It really makes a difference. When I go to Useville, people seem to really appreciate it. Actually, everywhere I go, I learn something because it's funny. The issues really are different depending upon the part of the county. So this wasn't on my schedule of meetings, but you probably have heard that last week grand jury testimony was released to the public, and an article appeared in the Maryland Independent. And so I know that because any news article, I actually, and I can say to Jeff's here, I received a call 5:56 p.m. Hi there, Tara, come on in. 5:56 p.m. on Monday night, and I certainly wasn't prepared or expecting it, and felt very uncomfortable talking about it because I hadn't seen what he had apparently already seen, and so I didn't comment. And so of course, you know, the article was the article. And so I could have started commenting on Facebook or blogs or things of that nature, but my better judgment said the best way to handle this is to really hear from people what is on your mind, what do you have questions about, and rather than my beginning with, you know, thinking that I know what you have questions about, I thought I brought everything I could think of as backup. So if you'd like to just go ahead and start, how's that sound? Okay, so we'll do Brendan and then Ms. Trosbach.
So I read the article, and I actually sent Mr. Newman an email and asked him that he quoted Covington as saying that there was a release of these transcripts for the public to read, but I can't find them anywhere. And Mr. Newman refused to share them from the paper. I sent a note to Mr. Covington, got no response from him when I asked to see them. So I don't know what these transcripts are, and you just said they were released to the public. Were they, or were they just released to the paper?
They were not. And let me just tell you what I do know. A petition was filed by the state's attorney Covington. It was State of Maryland versus John Doe. So you can imagine right off the bat, the clerk's office would have no idea who that was. It was regarding the grand jury investigation. It was a miscellaneous case number 1538. In the petition, and I have all of these documents up here, and I'm not going to start circulating copies of these things, but I'm more than happy to stay here as long as it takes and to come back again to go let people review and inspect what I have. In that petition, which was taken to the judge on January 7th, which would have been the same day that the commissioners had our meeting, Mr. Covington, you'll be able to read this, indicates that the grand jury was acting in an investigative capacity, that he believes that the testimony and documents were relevant to the allegations that were made against me related to a December 29th event. He said that the investigation of these matters has been concluded and criminal charges have not been filed. Also, any potential charges from the December 29th events would be barred by the applicable statute of limitations. So he then goes on to say that on December 17th, the state's attorney's office received a Maryland Public Information Act request, and he talks a little bit about that, and that there's no question that the testimony and other documents fall within the parameters of the Maryland Public Information Act. He goes on to justify it by saying that 3 of the people who testified, and the people who testified were Pauline Brewer, Deborah Tarbox, Deborah Hudson, who is now Deborah Hudson Hall, who's the chief of our fiscal services, Deborah Tarbox, a lot of Debbies as it says, and Sue Greer. Did I miss one? Deborah Roberts, Deborah Hall, Deborah Tarbox, Pauline Brewer, and Sue Greer. And so that they're all public officials. And so that's what he put in his petition, that the allegations of the criminal acts related to me dealt with, and he doesn't mention the W-2, he mentions, or any W-2, misconduct in office, and that he thinks it's in the interest of the public to know this. And then he does cite Maryland Rule 4-642. And the judge signed the order. He looks like he wrote the 7th, and then he wrote over that on the 8th, and it was stamped into the clerk's office on the 8th. So, so in answer to your question, and this is my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, I do not believe that the release of grand jury documents comes under the Maryland Public Information Act. It comes under Maryland Rule 4-642. And that rule says that the state's attorney can ask for an ex parte release, and by that I mean is the ex parte release would be, I go to the judge, I'm the state's attorney, I say, Your Honor, I'd like you to release these documents. And I don't think you need to call or notify anybody else because I'm releasing them for another investigative matter, another jurisdiction or what have you. The law allows him to do it ex parte under those circumstances. However, if it is not ex parte, the law requires that the judge, or certainly the judge would be expected then, to notify other parties. Mr. Covington seems to imply that because the parties were public officials, they should not have any heartburn about it. But I would tell you that I would doubt seriously that people who are county employees consider themselves public officials. They would certainly expect to have some protection. At any rate, the judge signed the order. The law allows the judge to, or encourage, the expectation would be that the judge would say, hey, Mr. Covington, you need to go back and notify these other people, these grand jury witnesses, and Kelly, who was the focus of this. And then that gives us an opportunity to say, okay, we would like a hearing. And then the judge has to set in a hearing within 15 days, and then the judge sorts it out. So that didn't happen. Now, what I did was, in order, because Mr. Newman called me at 5:56 p.m. Monday night. I sent 2 letters, didn't receive any response. So finally on Friday, I filed my own motion for disclosure with the court. And I asked the court to release the information to me. And the judge issued an order late Friday. I got in the last 3 minutes before the courthouse closed. And in the order, the judge directed the state's attorney or authorized immediately to release to the petitioner grand jury testimony, exactly basically what that would have been provided to the press, and ordered that the remaining requests contained in the petition fall outside of the purview. So the judge said that this whole idea that this information that was released was under the Maryland Public Information Act. No, she said only the pieces that she released, and it's the state's attorney, which would be the grand jury testimony, etc., did not fall under the Public Information Act. It fell under Rule 4-642, and everything else was the Maryland Public Information Act. And she then deemed that to be the MPIA request, and that the state's attorney shall respond to the request in accordance with the Maryland Public Information Act law. So I know that's a long answer, but you're going to get a lot of these long answers, because the bottom line is I don't know how that got released in that way. There's also an indication that another individual was had this information released to him as well, and I don't know, and I was told as a Public Information Act request. It would not be suitable for Public Information Act requests.
So my question though is, I don't know that it was released to the public, right? I mean, it was released to Mr. Newman. Can anybody else see it, Mr. Newman? I mean, these grand jury testimony that you reported about?
That's not up to me.
Pardon?
That's not up to me.
Well, you have them, right? I mean, the state's attorney gave them to you.
Well, I don't have any more.
Oh.
I have bosses.
Oh. Okay. But you report in your article that it was released to the public, and I'm just questioning if that was true.
Well, the state's attorney
I mean,
implied they were released to the public.
so he said they were released, but you didn't investigate to find out where they were released,
They were released to me.
but you're not going to share them. So they weren't. So they were really. The story was they were released to you, not to the public.
I suppose so.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't.
Because I asked for them. I asked the state's attorney for them. I asked you for them because you write this article that says there's some damaging stuff in there. I'd like to be able to see it. And as Covington said, come to my own conclusions, but I can't get to it. So I'm like, well, what is this about? Because it seems like a smear job as opposed to, something that's really been released to the public, But you haven't seen them?
As I said, I had to file a motion
Uh-huh.
pursuant to Maryland Rule 4-642, not the Maryland Public Information Act. And late on Friday, the judge signed the order. I got into the courthouse just before it closed, went down to the state's attorney's office, and he provided me with the transcripts and the information. I'm told that what I was provided was exactly what Mr. Newman had been provided. But as far as it being available to the public, no, it certainly is not. You would have to file, just as I did, this motion.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That was my question.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Gibson.
Did you state that that in that motion, that the folks that testified were all public officials?
That's what the petition from Mr. Covington says. It
Okay,
says,
and, with that said, I know Pauline, but I did not know you worked for the county, I'm sorry.
It was news to me too.
You're not a public official.
You're now working for the county?
And it's my understanding that what she testified to was not, she testified to actually her actions and the actions of someone else prior to them being elected. So, is that correct?
let me just ask, Jeff, did you get a copy of the petition from the state's attorney and the order? Did you ever get that? I know when I talked to you, you had never gotten a copy of Mr. Covington's petition and the order that was signed.
From the judge?
Yeah, the first order.
No.
Okay. So to the best of your knowledge, you thought you were simply getting this in response to a Public Information Act request?
Yeah, I just asked for it and got it.
Okay. So you didn't have to file a motion to disclose?
No.
Okay. Thanks. So I think, you know, I'm sure that the judge was just simply relying on what was stated in his petition.
Thank
Go
you for
ahead.
that. No, that's my question. So my other question I asked Mr. Newman, and I was a little confused about the answer, was, you know, I obviously haven't read this testimony. I don't know who was where or what. You know, I have no inside knowledge at all. But taking at face value everything that was said in the article, that you, in your role as a county commissioner, looked at documents created by the county government, that somehow that constituted a release of documentation, but I wasn't real clear. It didn't say that you released it. So what's the infraction? What's the crime? What was alleged? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, what's been alleged, if I might answer, my name is Sean Johnston, is I asked that same question of various parties involved in this story, just as an
Come on,
outraged
Sean, and have a
citizen.
seat.
Yeah.
I sit all day if
Okay,
you don't
all
mind.
right. So stand up then.
That's what I can't believe I'm reading an article that accuses one of our public servants of releasing, quote, releasing information. How can it be a release of information for the person responsible for signing off on the fiscal state of our county to review documents? If I know anything about how government works, and Candice, you can speak to this too, of course, but it's very unlikely that Ms. Kelly went in and took actual copies of any tax forms. I imagine that aggregate information is available to you on request, and I doubt that anyone was singled out. If I'm reading the story and understanding why those documents wanted to be looked at, I would imagine a review of quite a few documents took place, not anyone singled out, not any official forms, but just the data that was used to fill out those forms. Would you like to speak to that issue? Because I object to the use of the word release in your article, sir. I reject to the use of the word release by Mr. Covington, because I quite frankly think that that word release implies something that no one here is saying happened, and I think it's a lie and it should be retracted. Candice, I'll give you the floor.
Well, you know what I found, I will tell you, when I did receive the, did finally, you know, get a copy of the, hi there,
Hi,
welcome.
sorry. Okay.
No, you're fine. And what's your name?
Come sit here.
I spilled my water, so.
Well, thank you. Thanks for, somebody says, feel like I'm in church here. Well, let me just say, you know, for me, when I finally saw the transcripts on Friday night, it was shocking and illuminating, but let me just back up. I think probably the petition, and Tony Covington's petition in his own words, were that he was referring to a misconduct in office. All of this discussion in the article about a W-2, I mean, I'm like, what is this about? And I also have to say that, you know, it's kind of ironic. First of all, nothing was ever released, but he's talking about a release, and yet we're talking about the release of grand jury testimony. So let me just back up, and I think I can help you with this whole idea of why this became an issue. And I was unable to really talk about this for the last 2 years because this was pending out there, so I couldn't really discuss it. So let me begin by saying, when I took office, I assumed the same responsibilities and duties that were held by Murray Levy and then Wayne Cooper. And by that I mean that they had complete oversight, if you will, for what we call the C-Wing or the Commissioner's Office. And that included mileage logs and things of that nature. And I also remember when I was first elected, we did not have policies and procedures and things as we do today. Ms. Tarbox, Deborah Tarbox, was, I guess you would say, mostly provided staff work for me. She was my assistant, but she was the office manager. And so in that point in time, we had, in the C-Wing, we had to bring in all the documents, all of the transcripts, all the mileage logs, all of those things, and they had to be dealt with in our office and handled in our office, as well as expense forms and things of that nature. So that's how I am even involved in this, because ultimately, before those mileage logs leave our office, I have to sign off on them. Even though I'm not, people have said, you know, well, I'm not a supervisor, of course not, but there's somebody that has to do that administrative piece, and that was, at that point in time, my responsibility. And I will tell you, it was getting frustrating for Deb Tarbox, because very often the mileage forms, and I do have some of those with me for later, someone would like to see, were late coming in, difficult to read. She expressed some concern to me about the fact that she was then transcribing that handwritten mileage form to a typewritten form, and that was putting her in a vulnerable position. And a couple times, you know, I said to her and discussed this, make sure you attach the commissioner's form. You don't want to not have that there, because let's face it, you'll be the one held responsible. So we were dealing with a lot of that. This incident, according to what is said in the grand jury testimony, happened on December 29th. So that would have been a Thursday, I'm pretty sure. And in Mr. Covington's background,
What year was that?
2011,
Okay.
and because remember, at this point in time, we don't even have any policies for these take-home vehicles. You've got county employees, this isn't just county commissioners, let's be clear about this. You have county employees taking home county vehicles, and we really don't have anything in place adequate, in my opinion, to cover that. And the reason why this is important for you is because we are self-insured in that we have a local insurance trust. I see, you know, the sheriff was here. You know, so when there are vehicular problems, that is paid for through the legit. And my nature is such that you want to have all your I's dotted, your T's crossed, and I ran on a platform, there's no secret to that, of making sure that we're held accountable to our citizens for the use of these vehicles. So that's kind of the background. So at that point, December 29th, in Mr. Covington's own background paperwork, I'm sending an email to Deb Tarbox, Deborah Hudson, and Rebecca Bridget at 4:05 p.m. I'm clearly not even in this building. I'm gone, and I'm sending an email, and that's in here, about, hey, I'm really worried about the way we're calculating this mileage. You know, you can't consider someone who doesn't drive a vehicle. There's a lot more involved. There's tires, there's oil, there's gas. We have to figure out an equitable way to track this. So, according again to the testimony, at 4:30 p.m. or thereabouts, Ms. Tarbox goes down to the payroll office, and she asks for this W-2, okay? At that point, the payroll clerk is very concerned and doesn't want to give it to her, and she calls her supervisor, who does not answer, and then she calls the person in charge of the department, who is Deborah Hudson. Deborah Hudson says to her, hey, basically, you know, can you ask for some additional time, let's do some research and find out what we really can and cannot do. And Deb Roberts says she'll do that. At that point, now keep in mind, at no time did anyone ever call me, ever. At that point, Deb Tarbox comes back up to the commissioner's office, and then goes back down and gets the W-2 with the Social Security redacted, okay, and then comes back with it and gives it to the county administrator. Again, I'm at home, no one's called me, all right? Now, why, so then the next question is what Deborah Roberts said, the payroll clerk. And in her testimony, she specifically asked, and this is just kind of shocking, question, hold on one second because I want to clarify something here. Did Ms. Tarbox tell you that Commissioner Kelly or Dr. Bridget told her to tell you to give it? The answer, yes. So that's not your speculation? No. That's what she said, okay. I mean, and this is the kind of stuff that went on in this interview. So at that point, she gives it to Dr. Bridget. The next day, okay, is Friday, the 30th of December. And on that day, an article hit the paper, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later if you like, but at that point, that's when, at that point, Deborah made a decision, Deborah Tarbox, to leave the Charles County Commissioner's Office. My point is this, there was nothing ever released, nobody ever called me. Normally, what would happen, folks, in this kind of instance is somebody would say, this is what a commissioner's asking for. And somebody would pick up the phone and call the county attorney, and people would get together and they'd say what you can do, what you can't do. But what's important and interesting here is that there's never been any indication of a disclosure. There's never been any indication that anything even transpired in that regard, and I certainly wasn't even in the building. So, you know, I just want to point that out. Also, when you look at the, if you ever get the transcripts, what you're going to see is there is only one witness. One witness. In the article, and I don't mean to pick on you, Mr. Jeff, I know you've got a job to do, buddy, but it says that all three, or other people, let me find it here, said it was, let me find the article. You know, that was the case. Well, that's really not what they said. They just talked about what they knew. And the article was somewhat misleading in that respect. It kind of made it sound like all of these witnesses said this. Well, no, one witness said this. And the other witnesses just said that, yes, she came down. No, we never talked to Commissioner Kelly. No, we were speculating as to who gave the directive.
So at the end of the day, I mean, to my question of release, it's not like you got some of these tax forms and posted that on Facebook
Yeah.
or something. I mean, that's kind of what the article made sense.
Thank you, guys.
And that's what I was trying to get at, is like, what is it that you released? What are they saying you released?
And I can even give you more of the history, but let me just go back and Jeff,
Can I ask a
Sure,
question?
sure.
Because
That's what we're here for.
I've been reading the article as well, and I've been pounding off in my head that a W-2 is something that the employer gives to that employee, saying this is how much you make. Who is county government? Who employs them? Everyone sitting here that lives in Charles County. So if I want to know how much you make, I have every right to know. And in public, that I know you make so much per year. But do I not have the right to know what all the employees make? If I wanted to see their W-2s, I don't redact the personal information.
Right,
I
and
don't need
that's-
to know where they live. I don't need to know their social. Why can I not know that? Like, why is that such a
under the
big
Maryland
secret?
Public Information Act, if those things are redacted, then you certainly would have access. And that's what this all started about. And I can give you a little bit of background on that. Okay, the issue here is, are or were commissioners properly reporting personal use of the vehicle? As everyone knows,
I brought that up myself as a candidate back in 2010, actually back in 2008, when Cooper started this whole mess. And you were commissioner at the time. You didn't take home
now,
vehicle.
they got those after I lost.
Was it after you left? Sorry about that. Sorry about that. But anyhow, Cooper decided to take one, either Patterson took one, and then Reuben took one. So I said, wait a minute, what kind of tracking system do we have here for gas, oil, insurance, stuff like that? Sheriff's Department, I guarantee you, he knows what his officers are doing every single minute. They know exactly how many miles they're riding and everything. Well, why can't you, as the full-time commissioner, have that same rights and responsibility?
Well,
That's what she just said, is that what?
yeah, I don't feel, I felt at that time, because that was before Resolution 2012, and remember, one thing about Ms. Tarbox, I relied on her heavily because she was there during the Cooper years, so she understood way more about this process than I did. That was
But there's still no tracking system.
No, but that wasn't her fault, that was a county fault, and what I can tell you is, this happened on the 29th. Then the next day, we had a lot of drama in the office because Ms. Tarbox then made a decision and wanted to be moved. Well, so now we've got Saturday, New Year's Eve, Sunday, January 1, January 2nd we were off, came back into the office on January 3rd. At that point in time, because I am extremely confused now, trying to figure, all I want to know is, are we properly capturing personal mileage and reporting it to the IRS? I don't care who's doing what. I just want to make sure we're doing our job. On January 3rd, Dr. Bridget and I met with Debbie Roberts, who was the head of our payroll department. And she provided a tutorial, if you will, of how, because a W-2, and remember in Charles County government, you know, like for example, I have a certain amount of money taken out of my paycheck pre-tax, and then I can use that for medical expenses. Some people have it for daycare, you know, lots of things like that. So she explained how all of those different categories worked. And then, and I have a copy here too to share with you, after that, Dr. Bridget put together a report. Again, she documented that tutorial with all of the people who had take-home vehicles, W-2s, with the social redacted, for everyone to see, so that everybody was clear on it. Unfortunately, during that meeting, I was told by a county employee that the entire first year that the commissioners, previous board, had their vehicles, okay, they used them like they were their personal vehicles, and that for the entire first year, they did not disclose or capture any personal use.
It's an extra perk to them.
Well, I said, why is that? And she said, well, we tried to do training sessions. I mean, let's face it, the commissioners are the commissioners, they just didn't do it. So I was worried, very worried about that. The second thing she mentioned was that in her opinion, and this is just opinion, and she was, and it pains me to have to talk about this because I don't want to put people in the spot, but that she felt that there had been under-reporting. Now, yes, ma'am?
Well, hearing this makes me have a question. I got pulled into all this because I did a Public Information Act request on the total mileage from the former Board of Commissioners who chose to drive SUVs. My Public Information Act request was covering the period 2008 to 2010. Now, it took a second time of me requesting all of that information to get it, but how did I get a letter signed by Sue Greer saying, here's the personal mileage by year and by month, and I was given numbers for 2008, but you're saying there was nothing reported. So that doesn't add up.
Yes, I know, and well, that's interesting. I'm only telling you what, I went back to my notes and what I had written down.
And that we also have a county attorney, somebody's not doing their job. I mean, IRS can be on this county like, bleep.
Well, I find it.
I don't understand how I mean, if you're coming in, that's one thing, but you still have, you know, the structure there that they're employees of the county. Someone's not doing their job if they're not saying, you know.
Well, as I said, I don't believe, from what I can find out, that there was even a policy at that time. Now, that's January 3rd. As soon as I left that meeting, I came back to my office and I called the auditor because I don't know about these things. And I don't want to be in this position. I'm kind of feeling a little bit responsible. I'm a brand new commissioner, so to speak. I called the auditor and I said, this is what has been reported to me. What do you recommend? And the auditor said, please prepare a letter asking us to provide an engagement letter to look into this. I did that on January 3rd, and I copied the entire Board of Commissioners. So for anyone to say that there was anything, deceptive, everybody was notified on January 3rd. Then on January 19th, I participated in a conference call with Ms. Hudson, present, who's the Director of Fiscal Services, with the auditor via conference call because they wanted to put someone on the phone that knew about these IRS subtleties. And they said, listen, it would be, if someone were found to not have reported, it's on them. They'd have to go back and figure it out, or we could make them pay, take all the knowledge and consider it personal. But the county would not be held responsible. That's all I'm concerned about at this point.
So I've got a great follow-up, if you wouldn't mind. It's so right on the point, and from your first answer to my question. So, as you've explained it, as I understood, based on reading the article, but also following the situation from years past. So the word release still troubles me greatly. I don't know why anyone could honestly use that word, and they should be rebuked for doing so, number one. Number two, it seems to me from what you're presenting that your intent on attempting to get that information, first by reviewing a W-2 internally, second by going over this spreadsheet prepared for you by whoever, an aggregate information. Your intent was to make sure that county was doing what it was supposed to do and implement procedures to do so going forward. Your intent was not to go after someone for not doing something correctly in the past. Would that be fair?
That would be not only fair, and to go a step further, on January 31st, I felt like we had nailed it out of the park.
Right.
On January 31st, the Board of Commissioners approved what I thought was a really strong policy. Plus, we had the GPS now on the cars, which after the fact, some of our commissioners didn't realize that. But, so at that point, we have done the best we could do, at least in my opinion. And now, the other thing to keep in mind is in county government, when we have something pending, we get a matrix every week from staff. And that matrix sets forth everything that is pending, that we're waiting for staff to come back on. Well, the Clifton Gunderson audit remained on that matrix for, oh gosh, another good 30 to 40 days, until finally I said, we could take that off. Because once we did the policies, and the new standard operating procedure on January 31st, I didn't really want to, cause a lot of problems. I felt like we had fixed it. And that's always been what I'm about with this. And it's kind of interesting to me that after 2 years of having this stuff, that nobody else saw, the people who had access to this, that there was really, what's this about? It's about mileage. It's about usage of vehicles.
So in summary, before you came in, we had procedures not being observed properly by the government because it was a new PERC.
Well, there was no prohibition against personal use.
So that was a problem. Since you came in, within 12 months of assuming office, you took action to discover that and rectify it. At the end of the day, no one was hurt. No one was pursued for any kind of back penalty. There is no scandal here. I consider the matter closed, not to mention the article comes out, and within 1 week, I'm standing here, Joe Q. Citizen, asking you direct questions and getting direct answers. I'm satisfied, and thank you so much for scheduling this. I feel great. I get upset when I read that someone I voted for and look up to did something wrong. That's why I left my family to come here tonight. I want to thank you for answering the questions, and I hope we've set the record straight.
Thank you, Sean. Buddy?
I'm confused. I know I'm a little slow.
No, it's
What exactly was the grand jury investigating you for? Do you know?
Yes, I only know what Mr. Covington put in his petition.
You're talking about the misconduct in office?
Yeah, that's what it said.
But that is, misconduct in office is a conclusion or a charge pursuant to an illegal act. So what I'm asking is, what illegal act did you commit for the misconduct in office? Is it the W-2 stuff? Are they alleging that you disclosed?
That is literally what they alleged, yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm a little reluctant, given the slapdown that I got in the paper, but I will say this, I don't know, in spite of what Mr. Covington said, I do not believe that there was criminal activity as it's presented. I believe, and this is what's so discouraging, folks, I believe that I was the whistleblower. I believe that I was trying to get to the bottom of what the heck's going on around here. And so it's kind of ironic that here I've been sort of held hostage, and we have a responsibility to you as elected officials. But more importantly, I think there should be a certain amount of responsibility that people in other positions of authority should have to us as elected officials, that when we're trying to get to the bottom of something, instead of, fighting us or doing these sorts of things, they should be supporting us in trying to get to the bottom. And trust me, this could have been addressed right here in this building. And it still hasn't been addressed, so, to my satisfaction.
for Mr. Covington's investigation, did he check out the use of the vehicles?
I don't know, I can't answer that. My sense would be, and I shouldn't be, I would.
Did he investigate the commissioners?
I do not know.
Did he interview you about this thing?
No, but in all fairness, the day I came out of session that day. My lawyer happened to be here because the week before they had done resolution 2012-18. And so, obviously, it was such a, I mean, I will tell you, I've never been so shocked in my life. It's like, what the heck's going on here? So,
Okay.
and he never asked a second time or what have you. But the special prosecutor did interview me for about 4 hours.
So you mentioned earlier that you haven't really been able to talk about this for a couple of years because there was something ongoing. I mean, what was the first indication you or the other commissioners had that this investigation was even happening and that there was a question about tax forms?
The first thing I learned was when I came out and saw Mr. Covington and Mr. Spencer here that day. At that point, I was aware that he was investigating it. I don't know how I got the impression that there was a grand jury going on. I then became aware probably towards the end of the summer that it had been referred to the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
One thing, you know, people in elected office or just, you know, in life, people will say things. So how do I feel? I feel that my father was a police officer. I'm about as pro-law enforcement, pro-prosecutor as you're ever going to find. And I will tell you, after this experience, it has really caused me to wonder. Now, I have the money, the resources, the wherewithal. I prepared my own motion for disclosure. You know, I can do that. What about somebody who can't? The Constitution says that we all have a right to due process. What happened in my due process? We have a self-appointed judge and jury, in my view, in the way this was handled. No matter, you can call it Public Information Act, you can call it whatever you want. This was wrong, and I still say that anybody who knows me for 5 minutes would have to say, mileage, wonder what that's about. Maybe I should take a second look. And during the course of these 2 years, many other instances have come up that really put a spotlight on misuse of county vehicles. And I feel strongly about that. If you are using county equipment, but particularly a vehicle, then there's certain requirements in terms of how you do that. If you are using that vehicle and you have to fill out a mileage form, it's not that difficult. Fill it out accurately.
When I drove your kids in driver's ed, when I put your kids in the car, I had to write a mileage, starting and finishing. That way, in case you came to the school, said, where did that driver instructor take my son, or how many miles did he drive on? We have it written down to where we can bring that. Well, why can't the county government do that? Now, I remember back when we were raising some issues down to 4th and 5th to Ken Robinson about the mileage. If I believe correctly, Ken brought it up to the board to have a vote about the about the take-home vehicles. It went to 3-2 to keep it. Bobby Ritchie was the third one that said we're going to keep it. All right? Out of that meeting, or out of that vote, was there anything said, okay, we're going to keep track of mileage from that day on? Or nothing came out of that?
No, that's what I'm saying. It took a lot, I mean, one thing about government, we have to work at this. It took several meetings, if I recall correctly, and I can give you the exact dates, but as soon as we got into office, we tried to get in place policies and procedures. It wasn't until January 31st of 2012 that we finally had a policy that really set forth, you can, you know, how you should use it. And the way our policy is now, folks, is that you can't use these vehicles for personal use. Okay, if you're on your way home, if you're on your way home and you stop somewhere, that's fine, but you can't just, and that's what they were being used for. In addition, as of, our hope was that once we put the GPS systems on the car, that there would not be the need for the mileage logs because you would automatically be able to see where people went and you shouldn't be going anywhere except from your last appointment home and from your home to your first appointment. And so that the system itself would track that. To the best of my knowledge, that isn't happening. It hasn't happened now since June of 2012.
Why is that?
It just isn't used.
Did they disconnect it?
For about, from, it was July, end of June, beginning of July of 2012, for a long period of time, I'm gonna say maybe 6 to 9 months, they were just not using it at all because they claimed that they.
Somebody disconnected it.
Well, maybe they just didn't capture it.
When you say,
Larry.
when you say county use vehicles, does that mean fire department, police department, just
Yes,
county?
there's a distinction. If you are, for example, in our emergency services department, if you have to take that vehicle home, back and forth, and you are an emergency responder, that's a different story, because middle of the night, any old time, you're gonna be called in, okay? I've been a commissioner now for, 3 years? Nobody's ever called me out in the middle of the night, ever. And so, if you have, and there are, some county employees, Larry, had cars that were provided to them, for example, as part of their contract. This would date back a ways. Most of those employees are now gone. We don't do that anymore. So the only way you would have a take-home vehicle, and I would say, for example, someone who's in charge of the public works department, where you would have a sewage problem or what have you. Otherwise, we really don't have a large number of county employees who are not emergency responders taking those vehicles home. And with regard to the fire departments, their equipment, their apparatus, that is owned by their individual corporations. We have no control over that, yeah. So we don't get into that. Nor do we get into the sheriff's office. Their vehicles, they have their own policies, and anyone in this business, you're gonna wanna make sure you have strong policies to protect the county and to protect your drivers, and of course to protect the citizens.
So
Our
the school
civilians
does.
at the sheriff's
And
office have to keep track of their mileage too. Actually, some people that work directly for me that are civilians, I actually sign off on their paperwork, so we're required. Police officers don't have to, they're immune from that.
Because they're emergency
Civilians,
responders.
civilians.
So then,
And that's what I did, Rex, up until we had that change. Go ahead, I'm
so
sorry.
then, other than the emergency, what you would call county employees that are emergency, in case of the middle of the night, there's a sewage backup, or whatever the case is, who else has company vehicles? The commissioners?
Yes.
Those who choose to take the
Those who
vehicle? And that's it?
But why do the commissioners need to have a take-home vehicle? I mean, it's ludicrous. It never happened before Cooper got into office.
Candice's position on this will,
Well, that's true.
She
But
doesn't
it's,
drive one.
it still needs to be kicked back up.
I don't think it'll, listen, I'm not, and I just want to, and that's a good point to make. If certain commissioners feel like they want it, they need it, they are entitled to it.
Check it out.
Well, no, but my point is, if our policy says if the majority of the board, and the majority of the board voted 3-2,
Right.
says you can have this, and as long as you follow the policies and procedures, we're 5 people, we have to learn to get along, we have to work together, I'm okay with that, and I want to be clear about that. My position is and always will be, follow the rules, do what you're supposed to do.
Commissioner, I'm
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
could I go back to what we were talking about earlier, and that's, I know the reason I'm here, and that, I want to ask you more questions about this grand jury, and specifically, we discussed what you were being investigated for, and I think it's important that I provide backup to what I just told you about the definition of the word disclosure, okay? And that, and where that information comes from. And it comes from Wayland v. Roe, which is a U.S. case, okay? Where it clearly the various tax confidentiality provisions are designed to protect the public exposure information concerning, and then it goes on about the personal affairs and taxes. But confidentiality provisions thereby protect the right of an individual not to have his private affairs made public by the government. So that's the definition that the Attorney General has provided for that. And also, to talk about something that you just spoke about, and that was the authority in which a grand jury document is released, okay? And you are indeed right. It's Office of the State Prosecutor versus Judicial Watch, Inc., where it says the grand jury investigation materials are not subject to the Vaughn Index under the MPIA, Joan v. State. the PIA does not trump or override traditional rule of the grand jury secrecy. And a motion pursuant to rules addressing secrecy of the grand jury investigation is the exclusive means of the access to grand jury records, Caution v. State, meaning that the Maryland Rule 4-642 is the exclusive vehicle to obtain those documents, not an MPIA.
Well, and Judge Bedoni really kind of said that in her order, but you know, again, I go back to, when you're going through this, when an article appeared in the paper last Wednesday, you know, this whole thing is swirling around about what are they talking about, what is this about a W-2, what is really happening? And when you step back now, from my vantage point now, you know, I say to, I have to look in the mirror and say, are you kidding me? Just like, I mean, again, this was never about releasing anything. This was never about doing anything but getting to the bottom of, are we properly capturing personal mileage, okay? Because if the gross on the line of the W-2 says one number, and it should be, you know, say the salary is, I'll use myself for example, $58,000, but yet I'm only showing income of $53,000, and I should have, you know, that didn't make sense, doesn't make sense. Now, when you listen to the payroll clerk and everybody explains it to you, then you understand how it's captured on the W-2, but you still could and might have a question as to, did this individual, and I'm not saying any particular individual, underreport? Okay, what I have learned through this, and what I can assure everyone here is, I have my feelings about underreporting. I have strong feelings about the ethics of that, but my main concern is and was and will always be, did Charles County government do what we were supposed to do? Did I sit here because I was afraid to ruffle any feathers, okay? And you know that for ruffling feathers, you know, sometimes people don't like when you ruffle their feathers, but I wanted to know, and I will continue to ask those questions, did we follow the policy? Were we doing things correctly? Do we have any liability or obligation as Charles County government for ignoring something, especially if it only applied to county commissioners or elected officials? So we've got Mr. Stewart, Ms. Carter, and then Ms. Moon. Okay.
Well, Ken, do you think that you personally attacked and did one of the commissioners have something to do with this, informing Covington of what was going on in this building?
I feel that there has been major breaches of confidentiality in this building. I've got all these books here. I can show you examples of where things, information would come back. You know, something would happen in the building. I'll give you an example. And actually, I see Kim Simonson here, who's my assistant. And I've got the date. I can give you the exact date here when I look it up. But I'm a clean freak. You know, I like books. I like everything organized. And so we spent the day organizing things in my office. And I guess it was within the next day or so, we received a letter from someone out, nothing to do with, you know, doesn't work in county government, has a relationship with county government, wanting to know or alleging that I was shredding important county documents. And what happened was somebody, now we're talking this office, you know, you can see it's locked. You don't get back there. There are 3 locks to go through before you get back to where we were working. So it had to be someone that was sitting right there in this small little area where we were, who made this allegation that we were shredding important documents. So when you ask me, you know, do I think things are not confidential there? I absolutely do not. I have felt for a long, long time that, you know, I can also tell you that right there in the office, while I'm working with people on county time, there was someone who was, actually, I'll let other people speak to that, but, you know, I do believe that there were people in this office who participated and facilitated investigations against me that were founded, you know, nothing ever came of it, but it's one thing, you know, I mean, this is our office. This is where I work. I will tell you, that big black bag there, I take 1 or 2 of those home every night. I don't leave a piece of paper in my office at all. Nothing. Anymore. Yeah, anymore, because I don't feel safe. I have a key fob on my office now, but still people can get in there. It's very, very frustrating. So, yeah, I do. I feel that way. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. Let's see, Mr. Weinberger?
Just one
Oh, then Ms.
thing.
Carter, sorry.
The Candice Kelly I've known for a number of years. You just said you don't want to ruffle feathers. What happened to the Candice Kelly I know?
Well, I said I said I did, and I do, but, I will say,
Not
She
unnecessarily.
doesn't want to ruffle too many.
She's a fighter.
Ms. Carter?
I would just like to say that around the time this was going on, I was reading letters to the editor of the Independent, and the community, the county, many residents were wondering about the mileage on the car and what cars, and even some said they saw some county employees with the cars doing such and such. So I would have expected you or someone who had the capacity to do it to try to see what was going on with this, and I would have been disappointed if it wasn't done. And it wasn't 1 or 2 letters, and it was actually people that didn't write in. I would see them in the store or on the street, and they're like, wonder what's going on with those county vehicles, all that gas and all that money, and where's our tax money going? So I really expect this of our commissioners.
Well, I think thank you for saying that, and that's what's been so discouraging, because since this started, there have been other issues that certainly would cause people to question, and yet I don't see that follow through. And just 1 minute, Larry, we have Mr. Carter and then Ms. Moon.
The company that I used to be part owner of, one of our employees was caught by the federal government for using their vehicle for their private use. It didn't fall back on the company, but they have to enclose everything from the time they left their house until they got to a job site or to the office. That commute was not figured in as part of the business.
Well, that's what happened. That's what happens with this. There's this idea, and the way that it was being calculated prior, because the county, Ms. Tarbox was just doing what had been done, and so they would subtract the time from the office to county government, and then from the last appointment. But what was going on all day long, she had no way of knowing. And so, she's preparing this, but she can't speak to this. She's taking this off of notes that were, or the written copy. Now, that was one of my concerns. And really, I've never, don't understand all the ins and outs of this. I'm not an accountant or an auditor, but what exactly are we supposed to be doing? And how should we supposed to be doing it? And back to the ruffling feathers, what I found is people, they don't want you asking that question. Later in June, when the issue came up, or actually it was September of 2012 when the issue came up about the GPS. And now we finally had GPS records, and when, I asked to have the mileage logs, because let's face it, the GPS is here, the mileage logs should all be consistent. They were on the C-wing mail log, which means they were in a public spot, but no sooner than I asked for them, suddenly the county attorney decreed that they were now personnel records and couldn't be released. And there's no social security number. So it makes it, for you all, it makes it very difficult for you to have transparency, but yet grand jury testimony can be released. That's the kind of thing that seems a little problematic for me. And as I said, my biggest regret is that through the last 2 years that no one at the state's attorney's office didn't say, maybe we need to look into this. Rather than react in the way they did, maybe we better check a little more closely to see what's going on with these things. Or have someone else check, or recommend that there be an audit. We still haven't had that audit, that intense audit.
What about those GPS records? Since the
GPS was turned off, do you think something was occurring that people didn't want to have let out? So is there any way that we can investigate those GPS records, Freedom of Information Act, or?
Certainly could be released to the press. I don't know. Have you ever asked Jeff?
Oh, yeah.
And
Well,
who's got them?
Well, poor me, Eric asked for them repeatedly.
Did they get them?
You can get the GPS though, right? You shouldn't be denied the GPS records.
I mean, we have been.
They won't give it to you?
No, I mean,
But
that
the
goes.
GPS, they didn't know that the GPS was on there, so what I'm kind of wondering is, could it be possible that people?
Followed a process, and this is how it worked. And we weren't just reaching out and specially picking someone. That's my problem. Listen, I don't care who gets what.
Was Deb Tarbox in the running?
She didn't make, I don't know. I don't know where she was in the running. I don't know that. But I know that the committee had not finished their work, so I don't want to misstate anything. Okay, so we've got Lorette, Colleen, and then Mr. Stewart. Okay.
You just call me Larry, Larry.
Lorette, what is it? Larry? Lorette? But isn't it Lorette too?
Yes.
Okay. I try to get it right.
Do you? Thank you.
How about Mr. Green? Is that better?
That's good for me.
Okay.
Question
Mr.
is,
Green, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
you talked about positions. Steve Raymond's position. Is this position going to be advertised, or has it been advertised?
I don't know, but it should be. It should be,
Okay.
yeah.
Because I haven't seen that up, and I know you talk
Okay.
about,
No,
making sure we get the right person in there, and I haven't seen that advertised. So my question to you was, are they going to advertise that position, or are they going to hand pick someone, or what is the process?
the process is that you should advertise.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be, and I don't understand why. And it's really not so, you never know when you're hiring someone if you're going to get, quote, the right person, But for me, it's about creating a fair playing field. And I can tell you throughout the years, I've had people call me and say, hey, my wife's going to apply for this job, please, can you put in a good word for her? And I put in a good word, and I was told, and I think it was actually Deborah Tarbox who came back and said to me, ain't going to cut it. And I said, hey, that's all do your job. And that's the way it should be. Of course, people call us all the time, and I know of people who I think might be great employees, but HR ultimately makes that decision, or should.
Okay. Also, I guess after this whole mileage thing was announced, and I did fleet control for Allied Waste. I had about 200 trucks in this area, so I know that there is technology out there that can substantially, really track that. My next question is, once all this came out, did mileage actually go down, and did we save on gas?
We haven't had another report since this all happened in the summer of 2012.
So on a P&L report,
We
it
have
doesn't
no
show.
idea. Never
So
seen
in other
it
words, if
again.
somebody, and I'm just throwing it out there, was filling up, their son's or daughter's car, we wouldn't be able to track that with the mileage.
No, and I just
That's
want
all
to
I
be
wanted to
clear.
know.
I don't see that sort of. I know that
I know.
happened in the past. We have, but here's what I can give. In 2011, the commissioners approved in their budget. Okay, they approved adding GPS to all of the take-home vehicles, and I thought that was great because when you put the GPS on, it takes away the guessing. It says everybody's held to the same standard. So the GPS was approved in June of 2011, and it was gradually put on the cars. And then in June of 2012, and in January, actually, of 2012, remember I mentioned to you we were putting in place that new really good policy and procedure? At that point in time, Commissioner Rucci even said, I'm glad we're getting the GPS. I want to get a report on the GPS. I want to know how it's working. And so sometime, I want to say in the spring, I don't know exactly when, Dr. Bridget, the county administrator, took Commissioner Rucci for a tour over in our vehicle fleet management department, and he got to see, how the GPS works, which I think he was really impressed with that.
Yes, question.
And so then, when we got to the budget, And we had, I don't know if you remember, in 2012, we had à la carte, we called it, and you could, one of the items was $63,000 to finish out the GPS. So in 2011, we put GPS on all county take-home vehicles. In
How many vehicles
2012,
was it?
$63,000.
$63,000 in 2012.
How many
For a
vehicles?
system we
What-
don't use.
Well, that was for everything else, all the other vehicles, and I can't give you that number. So there was some discussion. One commissioner was not in favor of it, and Commissioner Rucci, God bless him, said, "Oh, I've seen the system, it's really great, you gotta go see it." And so at that point, it was, the county administrator was asked to bring back a presentation to the Board of Commissioners. So that would have been June 12th, I think, 19th. And then, after that, on June 26th, she was walked out of the building, and I didn't realize about the GPS report until an employee told me down at the MACO conference in August that there had been this report that had all this, at least in this employee's point of view, damaging information. At that point, when we got back from MACO, some of you may remember that in September, I asked for that report to be provided to all of the commissioners so that we could see what was in that report that was, obviously of interest to someone, I guess. I don't know. But I was curious after the employee told me that.
Are you saying you never got to see it?
I did get to see the GPS report. What I could never see, actually, initially, was the mileage.
The comparison between
Right,
the
right.
stated report and the physical?
And I asked for the mileage, I want to say like on a Tuesday in open session. I made sure I did all this in open session because I didn't want to have any issues. I wanted to try to be as open as I possibly could, and I asked for the mileage reports in open session. I was told by, at that time we had an acting deputy county administrator, Mr. Hancock, and I was told that I would have them by the following Monday at 2, and about 1 o'clock, do you remember, Kim, I think you were there, about 1 o'clock I got an email saying, or a call saying that the county attorney had determined that they were personnel and that they were not going to be released to me, or any, so. Okay, so Colleen, then Brendan, and then Mrs. Stewart. Colleen.
I had a few different points. When I got involved with the politics, it was because of the redistricting. And I sent an email to all of the county commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did, I received 2 emails back from you and from Ken Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked the other county commissioners why they hadn't responded to me. 2 of the county commissioners said to me, Scarlett should have responded to you. She responds to all of my emails. And I remember that being like, I didn't email Scarlett. I emailed you for a response. And it just never made sense to me that I would be receiving an answer from somebody else if I'm emailing a county commissioner. My other thing is, if these vehicles are of use for the county commissioners, why is there a different agenda for the county commissioners than there are for the school employees or anyone else who has a county vehicle?
Well, one thing is, the sheriff is a constitutional officer. We're not his boss. And so it's his responsibility to set up policies as it relates to those vehicles. And given their recent, approval through the validation and certification through CALEA, I can only assume that they're doing a pretty good job with that.
Well, one of the things that's so different about a county commissioner having the vehicle is the county commissioners are not working 8 to 5 like most of these other employees.
They're part-time.
Right, they're part-time, so they have a black SUV that they can drive anywhere they want, when they want, with their families. We've seen photos.
Well, yeah, but I think the new policy that we put in place January 31st of 2012 should have made that impossible.
Okay. And then this back pay for this new employee. Why would they be entitled to back pay? How can HR even justify that?
I don't know, and as I said, this decision was just made last Tuesday, so there may be some tweaking or something that takes place.
Did these 3 county commissioners run it past HR?
I don't know. I will tell you, the first I heard of it, it was not on the agenda. As we were about to go into closed session, we have Resolution 2012-18 that requires that even in closed session, agenda requests should be made 2 weeks in advance.
So this employee left Charles County or just went to a different department?
Different department.
So went to a different department. So
Just a
where did they
transfer.
get any, where did they lose pay? Where is there any back
Does the new
pay entitled?
like the new position pay less or something?
No, the new position, and I don't know this, but my guess is that it capped her, yeah. So, whereas in the position down here, perhaps you could keep getting increases.
But they chose to move.
Correct.
She moved on her own?
Yes.
Well, my concern, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what her question was, as far as with policy is concerned, you're saying that once the policy's set, that's what is being followed, but is that the case?
No. Well, for example, with the resolution, 2012-18, the policy that was set, and this is a resolution, says that you have to make your agenda request 2 weeks in advance. If it's something really urgent, you can make it 1 week in advance. Well, on last Tuesday, as we're about to go into closed session, a commissioner says, I have a personnel matter that I'd like to add to the agenda.
And what about?
And nobody knows about it, but clearly there was no discussion.
And what about the comp plan committee? That's the same thing.
Same thing,
That wasn't
yeah.
on an
No,
emergency, there was no agenda, it was just bring it
Created.
up and let's.
Well,
So how do we as citizens, I mean, like, when I see that, I'm like, I couldn't make it to a meeting, so I watch it online.
I did
and
make it
I'm
to the meeting.
like-
I was one of those 2,000. It
Well,
wasn't.
no, I'm not talking about
Oh.
that. I'm talking about when Commissioner when Commissioner Collins decided to form this comp plan committee,
well,
I mean,
will tell
there's no
you.
following the rules.
Right.
I mean, I
When-
understand there needs to be rules, but they make the rules, they don't follow them. There are other rules, they don't follow them, or they follow what they make up at the last minute. I mean, how,
Well, I mean, kind of, honestly, it's glad for you to hear people, for me to hear people say this, because after a while, you just wonder, am I the only person that sees this? I mean, the morning with that committee, how do you come in with a typed, written motion, and you couldn't have at least notified Commissioner Robinson or I clearly? 2 other people had seen it or were well aware of it. Same thing with, this happens.
Isn't that a problem alone, just that the other two?
the open meeting act?
Yes.
Well, the Open Meeting
Well,
Act is
did they
strict in
actually-
some ways, but yeah, you'd almost.
Did they actually converse about it? He could have
Together.
given them
Could
a
have-
copy. or
Could have talked with
emailed
them individually and, Okay, so, Mr. Weinberger and then Ms. Stewart?
Okay, we know, I hate to say it to you, but county government's a mess. It is, 3 to 2 that goes on. My question, and you may appreciate this one, how much is this costing us taxpayers for outside consultants, et cetera, so that you keep wanting to raise our taxes to pay for it?
Well, the day that the motion for the Committee of 6 was, the motion was passed out, Commissioner Robinson and I had no knowledge of it. It was approved 3 to 2, like that, and who's there but an attorney? Mr. Warren Rich.
There were 3, yeah.
I mean, who authorized him to be there? Who said he should be there?
3.
And it's very discouraging because this is money, and it's a lot of it. To pay an attorney to come in and do an internal investigation for 90 days, and then to ignore what they say, it's that kind of thing that is very frustrating for me. But, I don't get to, we do the best we can. But I couldn't, and even with the staffing, I have a real problem with the expense now that we're gonna have 2 very, very high dollar employees in Sea-Wing. I mean, if you assume that the new person and Mrs. Mower, both are only gonna probably work for the most part for 3 commissioners, that's a lot of money, plus they have an assistant.
Part-time commissioners.
And that's just my opinion.
How much was the attorney for the 90 days?
I want to say about 25,000, 30,000.
And it's never been, no recommendations from you.
Amanda, and then.
I have to go back to the W-2. I'm a little bit confused about the reporting of the mileage. So am I understanding this correctly that, let's say for the last year, commissioners that have vehicles, they are not reporting their mileage?
No.
And so.
It should be now. But I don't know, see, I don't ever see that anymore. I have no way.
Nobody knows.
Well, this is what's troubling. I have no way, as your elected official, of verifying that any of these things are happening.
Because the powers are taken away.
I'm not privy to the information. Now, I can keep putting in agenda requests, but it may take,
Well,
I
even
put
if
it
you do,
in.
it could be 3 against 2. There's
So-
nothing that's gonna happen.
So my point is, if they're not reporting the information correctly, let's just say for 2013, that means their W-2s have inaccurate information that they're gonna use to file for their federal and state
It could mean
taxes,
that.
right? It could mean that.
Assuming that there was not correct information on there.
Correct. And can you explain, because I know this is being videotaped, just to make sure everyone understands, if a person does not report actual mileage, how does that affect them tax-wise, or the amount of taxes they have to pay?
I'm not an attorney. I can only tell you that the auditor that, that Deborah Hudson and I met with via telephone on January 19th, 2012 said that it becomes their responsibility, and if they can't document it or provide the documentation, then they can be required to treat all of the mileage as personal and pay taxes on that. And that's just, I'm recollecting that, I don't have my notes in front of me on that. So that is, that's one of the things. I can tell you that Charles County government, I feel that we put in place things to make sure they do it. Now, what I don't know is since 2012, June 26th or so of 2012, I have not seen a GPS report other than the one that I was given for that very small period of time. I have no way of knowing who's monitoring that, who's signing off on that. I have no way of knowing if there are still mileage reports. And it's just not available. So that's really kind of the issue. Again, it seems like, oh, there's drama over mileage. I'm answering your question.
Right.
Can I live under these terms and conditions? Yes, I can. I'm doing it. But you need to understand that if
What do you do when you need a car?
I don't use a fleet car, I could have.
But there is a fleet.
There is a fleet, yes, and
So
you
you
can
can
go
check out
sign
a
it,
car.
right, and which is what I think honestly is the
That's
best.
A, B, and C.
Yeah.
So last question, for the current commissioners that have vehicles, do they get reimbursed for their gas, or do they just go to the county pump and fill up their gas tank?
You go to the county pump, yeah, and then you report you put in for your mileage, but they have, I never did it, so I don't know, but I understand, it's a pretty straightforward process. You have like this little gadget, and the gadget lets
You
you
put in
gas
for,
up.
okay, so you're using county gas, you're using a county-paid vehicle, and you're
No
getting.
insurance.
Right, so you don't pay for any of it.
Right.
And you're getting reimbursed for what?
No, no,
Or
no.
You're putting in mileage of what
Right, what you have to do on your mileage report is you have to disclose how much of that is personal, according to the law, so that you pay taxes on that.
As a personal benefit
Right.
you receive, right?
Now, originally, like someone, this time period, the time period that we were talking about early when we started, commissioners were able to use the cars or thought they were authorized to use it for personal use, but that isn't the case. We're not supposed, any government, county government employee should not use that vehicle. If you see a county government vehicle, unless that soccer game, you know what I mean, if you stop, is on the way home, a county employee shouldn't be using the county vehicle. The vehicle is to get you to work, if you have one assigned to you as a take-home vehicle, and to get you home. And if your Safeway is on the way home, you can stop. If it's not, you can't make a special trip. That's the way the vehicles are supposed to be used.
How about driving your family members in the vehicle?
Oh, well, you have to, and that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure, because that's where the liability comes in.
Right.
That's what my concern was, and I'll tell you why. I happened to see a child, so, this wasn't one of my colleagues, okay, so I said, I'm not, but I happened to see a child in a vehicle, and I was worried about that. And the way it's structured is, you have to have a waiver, and if you fill out a waiver, you can put a family member or friend in the car. You can have the person in the car, but we didn't even have the waivers. People were doing it without the waivers being signed until you will see, I don't know if it's in the article or if it's in the transcripts, but someone mentioned that I was asking about that, and that's why I was asking about the waiver, because that puts us at risk.
That's right, because even on the safety side, again, I work for Allied Waste, and the thing is, when you have your family members in a car and you get involved in an accident, they're liable. So in other words, if you have $1 million policy on your car, and it's over $1 million, then that comes directly out of.
Yeah, the owner of the vehicle, the county in this case, is exposed.
Well, but here's the other thing. I mean, for me, it also comes down to how awful would that be for you to read about someone, a child, being injured or hurt in a county vehicle.
your reaction is gonna be, what were they thinking down there? You know, so that's kind of where my sensibilities lean toward. Let's just get these things cleaned up. Okay, so we have Brendan and then Johnny and Tara. Did I see your hand go up? Okay.
So two questions. One is, you talked about GPS logs and also personal logs that were filled out by the employee.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that some of that, and I'm a little confused about what, was the personnel and not releasable to you or anybody else, I assume. Right. Is that both the GPS logs and the personal logs that they fill out? Or is it just one or the other?
You know, I haven't filed, and I don't know anyone that has filed a Public Information Act request. Has anyone in here filed a Public Information Act for a GPS record?
And I haven't heard back, and the date of my request was January 5th.
So it's past 30 days, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, the law says 30 days. Has anybody contacted you?
No.
So
actually, to add that to that, I'm sorry, somebody contacted me yesterday that they've also submitted a request, but it may not have arrived yet.
Well, the 5th, what was 30 days?
February 5th.
February 4th.
Okay, it says here, all persons are entitled to have access. Yeah, you should have been provided by now, and if not, you should have been notified. It says the custodian shall grant or deny the application promptly, but not to exceed 30 days after receiving the application. A custodian who approves the application shall produce the public record immediately or within the reasonable period that is needed to retrieve the public records, but not to exceed 30 days after receipt of the application. A custodian who denies the application shall immediately notify the applicant. So if you did not receive an immediate denial, then you should have it.
Not yet.
Or, okay. I mean, I find, I'm sorry, that's, and it's very unfortunate that for you, the only remedy apparently is going to court, and I don't believe that our citizens
And then I might end up before a grand jury again just for asking for the information.
So you mentioned earlier that you had a GPS report that was generated at some point in time. Are you prohibited from sharing that?
Well.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking.
No, actually, I had to turn that over to an authority.
Okay.
So I don't have that copy anymore. I turned it
Okay.
over.
So my second question is, you talked earlier about the staff and the commissioners receiving all of it. Can you tell us a little bit about who the employees are there other than the 5 elected commissioners? And were any of those people hired outside of the normal HR process, and if so, who?
Okay, well, we have Jackie, we have a receptionist, Ms. Swan. We have Kimberly Stevens, who does the scheduling for all of the commissioners. She's the calendar staff person. We have another staff person by the name of Carol DeSoto, and she is the backup to the clerk. So when the clerk's absent, she takes over. And she also handles, we have a lot of boards and commissions, and all those boards and commissions require staffing. So she does that. And she also helps, wherever, how it is. Some days you're busy, some days you're not. So, well, you're always busy. But so that's our staff. And the clerk to the commissioners. And that's a statutory position. She reports directly to the commissioners. She is our clerk, and she's under contract. Oh, okay. Well, I forgot people. Sorry. We have a citizens liaison who signed a contract in, I want to say, February or March of 2012. It goes for 4 years until the end of, or it goes to the end of our term. That contract, she only reports to the part-time commissioners, and her supervisor is Commissioner Collins. And then she has a part-time assistant who only reports to her.
She has a part-time?
I think he's, yeah.
And this was not, and was she hired through the normal?
Well, the assistant, I don't know what his arrangement is, but he does not work unless she works, and he's only there when she's there, and he only reports to her.
How can we get that job?
So let me make sure I heard your answer correctly. We have 5 full-time employees, plus.
And then the new person who starts Wednesday,
Okay.
that's coming over from PGM.
And which of those individuals that were not hired through the normal HR process? that you're aware of, to the best of your knowledge?
Probably, the citizens liaison. See, the citizens liaison came in for 60 days. It was only supposed to be 60 days. And then, this contract was entered into, between the citizens liaison and, Commissioner, mostly Commissioner Rucci, Davis, and Collins. And then she hired, Hussein, and I don't know, who's her part-time staffer, and I'm not sure what his hours are, what the arrangements are. I don't know if he went through the process or not.
Who brought the citizen liaison in?
I brought the citizen liaison for 60 days, 60-day contract. And the idea was for the citizen liaison to get us up to speed, get us on our feet, and then at that point, you would have to put the job out.
And so was that job put out?
No, no. Mm-mm.
So I noticed a citizen liaison goes in the evening time with 2 of the other commissioners.
Yeah.
Does she get paid extra, like overtime for that?
I believe it's comp time, but I don't know. I have no, nothing to do with those arrangements. I don't deal with that at all. And my personal opinion is, you'll rarely see me take staff to meetings at night because it's a lot on people to go out at night after working all day. I know I was a single mother for many years and had to do it. So, but some commissioners feel that they need staff. Again, back in 05 and 06, you didn't have that. If you wanted to have meetings at night, you were on your own.
I'm confused here. So, the other 3 commissioners have this, I'm trying to figure out how did they come up with this, that they all 3 used to have her work for them and exclude the other 2. I kind of find that baffled.
It's 3 to 2.
I mean, I was already setting the lines up right there saying, we only want you to work for us 3, and I'm trying to figure out what was you guys' position on that?
Well, Commissioner, let me just back up. Mrs. Mower did not want to work for me or with me, and there was sort of and that's how things worked out. Mrs. Mower was brought in under a 60-day contract to get the Citizens Liaison Office up and running. We talked back in 2000 and whatever it was, about even establishing, that was Dr. Bridges' idea, was to put in place a 311 number, like a 411, 311, so that every time you called, you got consistent information. I will tell you that I really believe that having someone who would be, able to answer citizens' questions is a good thing. The position, in my view, evolved into something different than that. Okay, Johnny?
I'm gonna make the same statement that I made back in 2009. Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Collins both have SUVs. Now, they're
It's
sitting
not
around.
anymore. Commissioner Collins does not have one now.
Oh, he turned his back in?
Well, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going He's running for president? Okay, now, anyhow, I'll make the same statement that I said then. At that time, he was driving an SUV. There's a lot of people in this county that are hurting as far as economy-wise. Now, they are part-time commissioners, but they also have a full-time job as a lawyer. So they're bringing in quite a bit of money. But yet you tell the poor person that's living here in this county that they gotta pay their gas and stuff like that.
Insurance.
But yet we got a county commissioner eyeballing around the county, acting like they're somebody. I'm sorry. That needs to come to a stop. It needs to come back to the table as another vote, and it needs to be taken away.
3 to 2.
Yeah, but you know what, listen, you have to believe in policy too. I mean, the vote was taken.
It can be retaken.
Well, but it's gonna be the same outcome, and so.
You don't know that.
Yeah, but Johnny, here's what I'm saying. I am okay, listen. We are 5 different people, and we're elected, and we've gotta honor each other's votes. I'm okay with that. The only thing I feel like is my responsibility is to make sure there's policies and procedures that we're following. Ms. McGraw, and then Ms. Dias.
Commissioner Kelly, speaking of procedures, I'd like your advice on this. I have put in a request for a closed meeting on behalf of an organization, Victory Housing, from the Archdiocese of Washington. I put that in back in November, in early November. And I suggest that the county have some mechanism for at least acknowledging that something like that is received. I have sent emails and I have made telephone calls repeatedly, and I still don't have any answer. I understand that staff is very busy.
Nobody's that busy.
But this is 108 units of affordable housing that Victory Housing is willing to put into Charles County. The site plan is identified, the drawings are made, but they need to sit down with the county commissioners to discuss the theoretical funding of this and concessions that the county's willing to make. So all we want is 20 minutes of the commissioner's time. So whatever you can do to help us get that would really thrill me.
Well, you know what,
Scarlet Mower.
Ms. McGraw, here's the real tragedy, and I want everybody to listen closely to this. If there's anything we need desperately in Charles County, it is this kind of housing. The people that are on the streets, in the cold, living in trailers that are substandard, living this deplorable life that we just spent 24 hours, last Wednesday, going from place to place counting. This is the housing that they need. Now, here's what's so troubling to me about that. And you know, and Mr. Weinberger, I just want you to know that I haven't lost my spunk, but up until Resolution 2012-18, I worked with staff to put the agenda in place. That would not have slipped by me. I kept very accurate notes, as did the county administrator, and we rolled. Nothing was left like that. You know why that hasn't been addressed? Because nobody knows what the answer is. Nobody wants to say what the answer is. Nobody wants to be held, when I say nobody, I mean at this level, wants to be held accountable. Staff are waiting to see which way is the wind blowing here.
Well, I can believe that because I've spoken with staff.
They're scared to bring it probably.
There's one more thing that I'd like to add just for the benefit of the people in this room. This 108 unit is for families, And in this county, we don't have a single facility for a family. If a man has a child and he is homeless, he has nowhere to go. If a woman has a child and she's homeless, she can at least go to Hughesville.
Well, what about if the sons are older?
Well, there you go.
Suppose you have teenage sons. They don't, you know, it's not a good match in Hughesville. I don't think it's not good. You know, homelessness is something that I care very deeply about.
And last June, we had 800 students in our Charles County school systems that were homeless. So that's deplorable and it's shameful.
It is.
I think if you went to Mara Levy and before the commissioners, you would get what they want.
I can't afford her.
All right, so now let's get to the other side of the county. My question is about this cross-county connector and the $1 million. I'd like to know.
That was
I
on
know
the agenda
again,
either.
That was, and that was 3 against 2 again. We don't have the money, yet we somehow, I saw the video of that again, and it was told by, I believe it was Commissioner Davis, told county staff, find it. Wherever you think we can get it from, let's get it. What can we as citizens do about that? I mean, it's like, I'm sure you find it.
You got 5 months.
Maybe she has a money tree somewhere.
Yeah, well, I'd like to know where that money tree is. 'Cause, I mean, it's just like, I don't understand when you have
The Corps of Engineers.
Army Corps of Engineer, everyone's saying, no, that's not gonna happen, that's not gonna happen, the permits are, what the beep, 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 beep. Are we, I mean, it makes no sense, I just can't, I don't understand. One, we don't even have the $1 million, but then I point blank asked Commissioner Collins, and he's like, the money has not been spent at 2 meetings.
But that doesn't
matter. I know, but that's.
Well, let me, this is a great teachable moment because it gives me an opportunity to explain how the capital improvement program works. And again, you know, for me, it always goes back to the process, how we do things. So every year, every department and outside departments, like the sheriff's office has responsibility for the correction center, they all have to come together early in the process and they have to identify what their priorities are. Capital improvements can be new construction, it can be repairs, it can be big maintenance projects, and by capital improvements, it's always a combination of funds, but generally speaking, somewhere in there is we're borrowing money. So anybody who has a credit card or a mortgage knows that you pay to borrow money, okay? So they come back, they bring all their plans to our budget people who, slice it and dice it and try to get it lean and mean. And they put that together. Now, things like the project that Ms. McGraw just mentioned, where that will require a certain amount of county contribution. Things like school renovations. We've got schools that are wonderful and schools that aren't so wonderful. You know better than anybody, Roseman. All of these things have to be prioritized, okay? And there's parks. You hear people talk about parks. All of those things are the things we want to do. So when we put this together then, we know that's our 5-year plan, and in the world of government, first there's the admin, there's the architectural and engineering, it's a process, and it takes several years. So when you start something, you can't stop it. You've got it, and that's why you want to be very thoughtful about these priorities. Well, when you suddenly say, who've put $1 million in there, $1 million comes out somewhere else because in order for us to maintain our bond rating, we can only borrow so much money. It's just like your mortgage payment. When you go to get a mortgage, they say, love to give you that bigger house, but you only can get 3 bedrooms because that's all you can afford. Well, the same thing is true with the bond rating agencies. We have to stay within a certain percentage in order to be able to maintain those bond ratings. So it's very unfortunate. But what's most unfortunate for me, and I'm not being critical, but when we do that, it says to the citizens, what is this, monopoly money?
Right.
Yeah.
How come you can snap your fingers and find $1 million for that, but what about the shelter? What about this program? What about youth programs that we never seem to have enough of? What about parks? What about quality of life?
What about not increasing our real estate taxes?
Well, what about the roads? I mean, for me, it's, what is one of the biggest problems in this county? Gridlock. Gridlock. We have a road, McDaniel Road, that desperately needs to be finished. But we put $1 million on a road that's going nowhere. And we're getting all this pushback. Oh, we can't build that road. We owe the citizens that road. And that's where I have a problem.
The developer owes that.
Well, and we need to make him either pay us or pay them.
Yes.
But my thing is,
But that $1 million can go to renovating the schools that need the new roof and need.
Carpets are being held by duct tape.
Plano High School could use the chemistry lab, and there's plenty of.
And that's kind of where I am. I just get tired of saying, no, no, no. We get a lot of good ideas that come to us. And then $1 million, people will say, well, in the world of government, is that really so much? But it's a start. It's a start. And it was tied up for something that it shouldn't have been tied up for.
Well,
and I didn't like the way it happened.
Well, and then
No-
also
no
when you have a citizen, as he's being called when he's really a lobbyist, that he can come
How
in
did
there.
that happen then? He
He came in and requested $250,000 only, and was given, was told $1 million. I mean, that's the biggest BS I've ever heard.
And 3 commissioners would never have just said, oh, okay, without having discussed that. I mean, don't tell me that that wasn't an agreement that had been made. And I think for me, that's what gets a little tedious too. I mean, why have the rules? Really, why show up? Because they've already, the 3 of them have decided how it's going to be. And never will you hear the day of that motion for the Committee of 6, where was the county attorney? Why didn't someone say, whoa, 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 we have a resolution, commissioners, and you're not following your resolution? I mean, at some point, I'm not going to sit up there and battle and argue every week because our citizens, I'm sure, are beginning to think, what is it, that Kelly woman? She's just doing battle on every front. That's what's troubling to me. These are legal issues that someone should be addressing, and it doesn't happen. And so I agree.
Whose responsibility is that? To enforce these regulations, to bring it to the attention of who?
Well, I would,
she's hired by the
I think what we kind of talked about a little earlier is that it's very difficult when you're in these positions, and what I hear, the refrain I hear over and over by certain people that I go to and I say, hey, aren't you going to do something about this? And the answer is 3-2. 3-2. So, okay, so we have Tara, Mr. Tarbox, Mr. Weinberger, and gentleman in the back. Okay, so hold on. Let's see, who did I say first? Tara, okay.
And this, I'm sorry, this isn't a question, this was a comment.
Okay.
But, you know, my mother and I have been discussing things, especially after all the recent articles, and my mother said, well, if Commissioners Kelly and ruffle so many feathers.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of people.
And I said, oh, come on, you know, you think things would have been different, you know, if she wasn't so aggressive? And I wish she was here tonight, because then you could see things could really be so much worse, you know? And I just think, I think we need some aggression. We need some aggression in this county.
I don't have any more.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Oh, that's okay, that's okay. I'm just gonna take it out. I really didn't need it. They're brand new, so I'm just getting used to them. Yes, ma'am. Well, let me get Mr. Tarbox, and then we'll come around, we'll get you at the end. Go ahead, Mr. Tarbox.
Well, first of all, I think my wife deserves to be back down in the position she's at. She's a very well county employee. There's still other stuff that people doesn't know what's going on. Anybody that's worked in this building knows her reputation is well received. Also for the 3 to 2.
Who's your wife?
Huh?
Who's your wife?
She's here working.
They're saying who?
Who's my wife? Deputy Tarbox.
And you know, Mr. Tarbox, I don't want you to go away with any impression that anybody's saying that Debbie isn't a good worker. Because I hope I didn't give anybody that impression.
She just did what, by what they asked her to do. And
Well, what we don't understand is if you leave one department, go to another, and then you come back, how are your...
if you really look at the way the government's is going in the last couple of years, if you see how many people have left and have gone, it's unbelievable.
But why do you get back pay?
Don't you wonder why some people, they just got rid of the human resources guy just last week. Why do you think he's going?
Why?
I don't know, can you tell me, because I never got told. I was in the closed meeting and I don't know.
You know,
But how is she entitled to back pay? She left and went to another department and then came back.
because you took a position that wasn't not equal completely with her grade and stuff, plus that will
Why did
also,
she
that
take
will,
it?
that will also affect her retirement also by losing out.
But why did she take it?
But if it's so bad, why does she want to come back?
And why did she take the job?
No, she's
Why did she move to the other department? And, I mean, she made that choice, right?
She made the choice to move to the other department while things were settled down when this whole thing got in the,
No, why
the
did she
case.
make the choice? I want you to be clear about why she
I'm
made
not
the
gonna,
choice.
I'm not gonna tell you why she made the choice.
Well, yeah, I
Okay.
let her speak. Would you like
Okay,
that?
but
Then she came back. Well, I guess my question is, she made the choice, not somebody for her, right?
Nobody pushed her out, did they? Or is that the-
Well, I'm not saying she wasn't pushed out.
Well,
I'm not saying she
Well, would
was,
you
and
like
I'm
me
not
to
saying
say-
she wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm not saying she was or she wasn't. But my wife is a rebel woman that does a good job.
And no denying that, but I will tell you, and I want to be very clear, and if you have some, if you want to go there, and I would rather not, but Deb Tarbox left C-Wing because she wanted to leave C-Wing, and it had nothing to do with anything that was happening in C-Wing, and there are a number of employees that were witness to everything that transpired on December 30th.
Well, there's other people that are voting to bring her back, and there must be a reason why.
Now, there must be a reason, and the timing is very interesting.
And also, as for the 3-2 vote for the comprehensive plan, I keep hearing the 2,000 to 30. I challenge everybody to go on the website and count the votes.
I was there. It's not the votes only. There was written comments that were emails and letters that were sent to the commissioners. That's
Right,
what
right,
the
I'm saying,
2000
we're talking about ones from like 10 years ago?
No.
We're talking about ones from...
No.
You see her,
They tried to even it out to make it fair, like a no and a yes. And they had trouble.
Who wants to,
Anybody is entitled to his opinion,
Absolutely.
but not to the facts. The fact is, 2030,
Right here,
wrote their comments
right here.
on the comprehensive plan. That is a fact, my
In
friend.
this right here.
30 were for
Do
it.
your research.
2,000
On
were
this
not
plan.
for it. That is the fact.
That's on this plan.
Yes, that is the fact.
I did, I saw
That is the fact.
I did.
You're entitled to your opinion, but that is the fact. Do not say that it is not 2,000. We are no fools.
Well, I would say that Mr. Starbucks has a right to say
You
that.
better
but I
believe
don't
it.
think- Certainly other people in possession of the facts have a right to challenge that. So I don't think anybody should disrespect this man. He's a husband of an employee. I don't have any problem with him saying that she's a good worker and she deserves to come back. I think even the people that may have gotten a little carried away, they were really focused more on the back pay issue, like, should the citizens have to pay for those choices? So no disrespect, I don't think anyone in here thinks your wife is a bad gal.
And I think-
If anyone did, I think they should apologize.
And Sean, let me just say too, and Mr. Tarbox, I want you to understand that, is that, from my point of view, it is about going through, the process. And, but, and also being accurate about the terms of the departure. But this is your wife, and I give you a lot of credit for being here this evening.
And that's something for you and her to discuss and work out.
No, it's not for me to work out. I want to be clear, this is not about me, and this is not about where she went. I am not in this group at all. This is between your wife and the county administrator and the HR department and how that was handled, okay? I was the second person talked to, and what's very troubling is that I couldn't have been more supportive, okay? And so, we don't need to dredge up personal family matters, but this is not about me. And, I think I have concerns again about the way things were handled, but that's where we are. And then we've got, wait a minute, Mr. Weinberger, gentleman in the back, and then Ms. McGraw.
Okay. There's a
Can I answer
program
that
in this county that is being run very ineffectively. It's called the Upgrade the Housing with Indoor Plumbing.
You're talking about the federal funds?
Yeah,
Vision
I'm talking about
2020.
the county administration of that program.
Well, we can't even give the money away, and it's federal money.
I'm not saying give the money away, I'm saying the administration
Oh, okay.
of the program.
And why do you think that?
Because the people who need this are being required to get 3 estimates. Why doesn't the county get 1 contract to do the work for qualified homes? These people probably don't know 3 contractors. It's just putting stumbling blocks into accomplishing the objective. That's inefficient. It's almost, from my experience in government, typical bureaucracy.
Commissioner, can I shed a little light on that exact subject?
Sure, because
Okay, I was briefed by Eileen Minnick, who is the Director of Community Services, about this very project. And in fact, the reason you have to have 3 is that there are federal funds involved. And when federal funds are involved, you don't have the autonomy to decide how you're going to run a program.
We
Wait,
get the 3.
please,
Don't
wait.
ask the applicants
Please,
to
wait.
get the 3.
You don't have the autonomy, so you must get 3. Now, there's a whole range of reasons why it's very difficult to, as the commissioner said, they can't give this money away, and they're looking for very innovative ways to do that. The latest of which is they had a meeting and asked nonprofits and even small businesses to come to a meeting for a new program that they've initiated to encourage civic organizations to find these people that need help and literally to be their trail boss, to take them through the process and help them get the permits, help them find the contractors, and for doing that, the county will actually pay that entity $2,000. Now, that's sort of thinking outside the box. It's asking the citizens of Charles County to get involved and help your fellow citizens. So I think that you can't just look at a problem and not understand all the various ramifications that create that problem or allow it to continue to exist. So believe me, the Department of Community Services are doing a lot beyond what a normal agency would do.
Well, I like to think, and I know what you're talking about because I was there, and I can understand you. I've been fighting this for 20 years, especially people in Nashville that don't have running water. But I like to thank Kelly for pushing this.
Thank you.
And I believe it's innocent staff. I agree with you 100%.
Jeff, did you get that?
I believe it's 100%. she wants to push this and think outside the box. Instead of staff people who's going direct, asking poor people for credit report. Are you serious? Credit and poor just don't mix. You can see me on TV, you can say what you want. Say what you want about me, but from day one, I've been fighting for the people. Now, I'm in the middle, but I like to thank her, but she wants to think outside the box with this program. And I do have problems, just like you said, with this staff. I think staff should be accountable. The citizens are paying them. Let them be accountable. What have you done for the people? You got $350,000 since 2010, and it's still there. And you got people still don't have running water.
And
So what's the problem? But she took the initiative to think outside the box.
Just one thing, Candice. They have even gone to the springs where people come to get water and handed out flyers and spoken to people there. So I am all for government efficiency. I do think that before we spout off about how ineffective staff is, we really should do a little homework.
Well, and I think in all fairness to Mr. Weinberger, the issue is, if you just were getting this cold, yeah, it does seem like that, but we have to do, this is none of your dollars. Well, it is indirectly, but I mean, this is not Charles County money. Right. This is federal money that we're going to use it or lose it. And you know what? We're going to have a hard time using it. Yeah, right. Because you can't put, a lot of these homes are substandard trailers, and you know, they're not legal, so we can't do it there. So if we can, you know, we're not going to have that many.
Excuse me.
But staff is
My
making
point
an
is,
outreach.
who gets the 3 estimates?
What Ms. McGraw was saying, the way this works, Mr. Weinberger, is we did outreach to the nonprofits, or you could even do it. If you know someone in your church, for example, or your synagogue, let me just finish. If you know someone in your synagogue and you know, a lot of these churches are doing outreach, that they need help. But you know, just like Cornell said, that person is never going to be able to have the wherewithal to do this on their own. You can then register, if you will, as their advocate. And you can help, the contractor will get paid, everybody will get paid, and the advocate gets paid. Now, to some people, that may seem bad, but since the money is there anyway.
You're not hearing me.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Let me try again. I don't think we need to pay advocates to get estimates when staff could get 3 estimates from different contractors.
They don't trust the staff.
Right.
No, seriously.
They won't talk to
They
them.
won't talk to the staff. The staff has done everything. I went 2 Fridays ago. I wrote
Put
all.
out an RFP. I bet you get responses.
No, I went all over. It doesn't. I've been all over this county, and if you are somebody from a church who comes and brings me food and brings me clothes, and I know that my grandson is doing drugs every time, when he pops in, he may be doing something wrong, or I don't want anybody in authority on my property. Listen, it may not be right,
I'm not talking
but
about that,
that's how they
Candice.
feel, Mr. Weinberger. They don't want to deal with government.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay? The applicant is required to get 3 estimates from contractors and
Right.
submit them to staff.
Right.
Who pays them?
My point is, let staff get 3 estimates of contractors to do the work for qualified applicants.
How is staff going to get the contractor in their house to get the
They
estimate?
won't give them permission, that's what they're saying.
But I think, aren't you asking who pays the contractor?
If
The
they,
county
The
pays
federal
the
money,
contractor.
federal grant money.
Federal money.
That's irrelevant. His point is that we could help the poor guy who needs the money get the estimates, but you can't do that without that guy's cooperation.
Exactly.
So Candice actually going out of her way to design a program where the advocate can step in and help, right, and act on their behalf. What else can you do? I suppose you can make an anecdotal list and get a global bid from the county, but Christ,
No.
you gotta get access to the property for a proper estimate.
And then that plumber, you're
Yeah.
going to go look to see
Of
what you
course.
got to do.
Well, they have a list. The county has a list of plumbers.
That you can go to.
Yeah, that you can go
But
to.
they're still going to want an estimate.
Would pre-vetting some contractors in advance satisfy the federal requirement or
No.
not? Yeah, so your hands are tied.
Listen, I was really, really optimistic. I thought this was going to be, was really going to be the final solution, because I'm so tired of every year the same thing. There are this number of units that we just can't do anything about, and that's why I spent the whole day down there, and I'm going to tell you, the answer, that will help in some instances, but the bottom line is, when you look at a parcel and you see 5 and 6 substandard trailers that the owner should be required to move those people off and move that stuff out, but then where do they go? So we don't have low-income housing, and so my latest idea is, is to work with, we've got the Manjamoy Center. We know we have water and sewer there. Let's see what it would take to get a developer and to work with the developer to put in some, a certain number of low-income units. Not only talking workforce, I'm talking low-income units like we did over in Patuxent Woods back in the 90s. But without the county, and this is where the $1 million comes in, we are not going to get any more federal vouchers, what people refer to as Section 8, whatever you want to call them. We're not going to get any more. So how do we put these poor people into housing? There's got to be a voucher system, and the county government is going to have to do that. And nobody, we talk about it. Well, if you can't get into a house, you're going to still be, or a unit, a rental, something, you're going to be homeless. And so they're the kinds of issues that nobody wants to grapple with. We just want to sit there and wring our hands and say, well, what are we going to do? We just can't let people continue to live in violation of the law in substandard trailers with children. You go down there, you're like, people shouldn't have to live like this. And you know what? I may not be able to do much in the last year, but I wasn't going to leave at least without trying. And,
What about the Vision 2020?
Vision
that?
2020.
I mean, I know it's specific to certain families, I know, but I'm just saying that
that is a very,
a lot of money is going to that.
right,
program.
it is, and that's a commissioner, here's my opinion, okay, I'm gonna give my opinion. We are not social workers in Charles County government. I believe, but I've got a little bit more experience than other people, I believe that if we already give the Department of Social Services annually, we give them an additional $300,000 beyond what we need to. That policy was started quite some time ago so that we would have a reasonable expectation that our citizens would get that extra help. When somebody needs something, a food, a Safeway card to get food or whatever, that we'd be able to do that. Okay, so to me, to go ahead and then start our own program, it seemed that we're not really in the business of social work.
Right.
And now we've done that, and we've taken that money, and we're using it for that, and we're only going to need more every year because the population's going to grow, and these are people that probably could be working at DSS.
They
But
did the same thing, they bought an ice arena.
well,
We're not in the business of owning an ice arena.
but that's an amenity, and everybody can use that if they choose to.
Yeah.
That's different than paying a social worker a salary for something that can be done somewhere else. But that's just my opinion. Now, how's it going to work? I asked a couple months ago for a briefing on how much the beautification committee has cost. I have no idea what that has cost, none. And we know what the Vision 2020 has cost, but I'd like to see what the deliverables are, what the benchmarks are. I just feel that these are important questions, and this man back here's got his hand up. So go ahead, sir.
Yes, we're on the subject of money, and I got brave enough to go across the Harry Nice Bridge into King George County a couple weeks ago. And there's this big welcome sign that someone has put up. Unfortunately, it is the Tea Party. And it says, "Welcome to King George. Population 25,100 million in debt." Now, that sparked my curiosity with Charles County. And I went to the website, and did I read it right where right now we're currently holding 300 million?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'll believe you.
That number sounds close.
Let me look it up. Go ahead, keep
No,
talking.
that's
Okay.
not that important. I was just curious. And I hate to ask this, but I have to because it's the stupid in me.
Somehow I doubt that.
Did everyone get 2 water bills? Or only me?
I
bet the electric bill.
My aunt called me the other day, and she was asking me, what do you know, what's going on, why did I get 2
There
water
was
bills?
there was a problem with the bay fee, and I was just wondering if that was everyone. Don't know.
Well,
What neighborhood do you live in? My aunt lives in Pinefield.
Pinefield,
Uh-huh.
yes.
Is that where you live? Okay, I'll be happy to check into that for you. I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
My neighbor got a $700
I choose to pay the
Wasn't-
lower
it
one.
wasn't
I got
high,
$600 electric bill.
Well, we don't control electricity.
Probably like 300.
But we could, right? If we could.
Yeah, I know.
He and I are going down to Southern Maryland Electric tomorrow.
Okay, so sir, I will look into that for you, but I want to go back to the debt question. You know, and I hear from people all the time, and as we approach the budget season, I'm terribly concerned, not just because Mr. Weinberger will call me up, but because I am concerned that we are really, you know, we really have a major problem in Charles County. I mean, our taxes will continue to escalate until we get a handle on growth.
The May meeting will be entertaining.
And so, you know, it's, again, deal in facts. And the facts are that for every residential unit, it costs you money. We've got roads to build. We've got school seats that we don't have. We have school buses we have to send around. We've got extra police officers that we need. And for every one of those extra police officers, they're going to travel more miles on the road, more gas, more wear and tear on the car, more tires. That's the fact of sprawl.
And more fire and EMS.
And more fire and EMS, which, by the way, we're relying on volunteers.
Yep.
And when those volunteers have to drive farther,